Get out of the car. My husband said it on the shoulder of I-10 in 108-degree Texas heat. His 26-year-old daughter leaned out the back window and said, $10, she's home before dark. He shoved my purse into my chest, slammed the door, drove away. My phone had been shut off for 2 days. I was 52 years old, 47 miles from home, wearing sandals on asphalt that was melting. And the two people I had loved for 11 years had just turned me into a joke. 3 years, 4 months, and 11 days later, my husband opened the Houston Chronicle and saw my face on page B1. He called me 71 times that night. I did not answer a single one. This is the story of what I did in the 1,228 days in between. That wasn't the first time they had crossed a line. It was just the first time they thought I wouldn't survive it. My name is Denise Carter. I am 52 years old. I grew up working class in Victoria, Texas. I learned to balance a checkbook before I learned to drive. When my first husband died of a heart attack at 44, I learned to balance a checkbook and a grief at the same time. I met Roy Carter a year later in the parking lot of an H-E-B in Katy. He was helping an elderly woman load groceries into her Buick. He saw me watching. He smiled. He was 51, a widowed electrical contractor with his own business, Carter Electric, and a 15-year-old daughter named Kayla who had already been told for 6 years that her mother's death was the axis around which the rest of the world should tilt. I did not know that in the parking lot. I knew he was steady. He fixed things. I married him on November 3, 2014. For 11 years, I cooked his meals, organized his receipts, kept his books, mailed his invoices, and showed up for his daughter at every birthday she allowed me to. I never tried to replace Rochelle. I never asked Kayla to call me anything other than Denise. I thought if I stayed consistent long enough, I would become furniture, safe, reliable, a chair in a room she would someday sit down in. I did become furniture, just not the kind I'd hoped. Before we go further, if these stories move you, subscribe, hit that like button. It costs you nothing, means everything to us. Roy was good at his job. Carter Electric cleared $112,000 a year. I was his unpaid bookkeeper, receptionist, scheduler, and licensed QuickBooks administrator. I never drew a salary. That was our business, he said. I earned $41,000 a year as a part-time church administrator and handed the checks to Roy every 2 weeks to put in the joint. Which, I realize now, 3 years, 4 months, and 11 days later, was a very specific sentence he trained me to say. Kayla moved back in when she was 25. A breakup, a lost apartment, a fresh start. I set up the guest room. I bought new sheets. I kept my mouth shut about the 6 months that became a year, the year that became 18 months, the 18 months that became 2 years and 3 months. She stopped calling me Denise by month 4. She stopped calling me anything by month 6. If she needed to get my attention, she said, "Hey," loudly, from whichever room in our house she was currently occupying. That's when I understood. I wasn't part of this family anymore. She used my car without asking. She emptied the Keurig pods and never replaced them. She brought men home at 2 a.m. and left the front door unlocked. I installed a smart lock with a code. She changed the code. Roy laughed it off. "She's still finding her feet, babe." They weren't helping her find her feet. They were replacing me. The first financial sign was April 2025. I found a $2,800 withdrawal from the business account I hadn't authorized. Roy said he'd lent Kayla money for a dental thing. Temporary. He'd pay it back by June. He did not pay it back in June. He did not pay it back in July. In August, $4,400 moved the same way. In September, $6,100. I confronted Roy in the kitchen on a Wednesday night. He said, and I remember every word because I wrote them down in the notebook I'd started keeping, "Denise, you know what your problem is? You count everything. Life is not an invoice." Kayla walked in, heard the end of it, and said, "Oh my God, is she doing math again?" They laughed together in my kitchen. I wasn't being ignored, I was being removed. Something in me that night, something small and quiet I had not known was still there after 11 years of being careful, started keeping notes. Saturday, April 4th, 2026. San Antonio. Roy had an electrical bid on a small dental office. I drove over with him on Friday to review the job site. Kayla came along because she said she needed to get out of the house. We stayed at a Hampton Inn. I paid. The drive back started at 3:40 p.m. on Saturday afternoon. Kayla rode in the back seat with her AirPods in and her feet on the center console. Roy drove. The Traverse's AC was failing. Outside, the Texas Hill country sky was the color of a gas station lemonade, and the dashboard thermometer read 108 degrees F. About 45 minutes east of San Antonio, I opened the business bank app. New transaction, $3,200 transferred to Kayla Carter's personal Chase account, same day, 2:11 p.m. While we were at the Hampton Inn, I said quietly, "Roy, did you send Kayla $3,200 while I was in the shower?" Kayla pulled out an AirPod. "Oh my God." "Roy." He said she had a car payment coming up. "Roy, we talked about this. You said no more transfers without discussing." Kayla leaned forward between the seats. "You know he's not stealing from you, right? It's his money." "It's our money." She laughed. "Girl, you're a secretary. He pays you." I turned to Roy. "Did you hear what she just said to me?" He looked at the road. He didn't say anything. That's when I knew I wasn't pulling any more threads. I was watching the whole sweater fall apart. I said, "Roy, pull over. I need to talk to you." He pulled onto the shoulder. He put the car in park. Kayla was halfway into the front seat now, phone up, filming. I did not know that at the time, but I would find out later. He looked at me. "Denise," he said, "I'm tired." "Of what?" "Of you counting every dollar. Of you making her feel small in her own house." "I'm tired." "Her own house?" "It's her home too." "Roy, I have been paying this house's mortgage every month for 9 years. I am not the secretary." Kayla said, and her phone captured it, and the Harris County DA would eventually play it in court. "Roy, just drop her here. I'm serious. Let her walk it off." I looked at Roy. I said, "You're not going to do that." He got out of the car, walked around to my side, opened my door. He did not grab me. He did not push. He just stood there in 108 degrees F heat, one hand on the roof of the Traverse, and he said, "Get out of the car, Denise. I'll pick you up in an hour when you've calmed down." I got out. I don't know why. 11 years of marriage training, maybe. He grabbed my purse off the floorboard and shoved it into my chest. Kayla, still filming, leaned out the back window and said, $10 she's home before dark." He closed the door. He got back in. The Traverse pulled onto I-10. I watched his tail lights for 90 seconds before I accepted that he was not turning around. I stood on the shoulder of I-10 for 22 minutes. A truck driver stopped, gave me water, let me make a call. He would not let me stand on that shoulder 1 second longer than he could stop it. He drove me to the Buc-ee's in Luling, 14 miles east. I bought a prepaid phone for $29.99. I bought a charger for $12. I bought water and a granola bar. I paid with my personal debit card, the one from the credit union account I had kept quiet for 12 years. The account Roy had never gotten his hands on because I had never told him it existed. $3,217.43. Balance, it was not much. It was mine. I sat outside. I activated the prepaid phone on the free Wi-Fi. I stared at the balance for a long time. Then I did 3 things. I called my sister Marlene in Waco. I booked a night at a Motel 6. And I took a Lyft to the motel, $19, driven by a college kid who asked no questions and turned the AC up to 72. That night in room 114, I did the following. 1. I called Roy's number from the prepaid. He did not answer. I left one message. "I'm safe. I'm not coming home. I'll be in touch through an attorney." 2. I took off my wedding ring. I put it in a Ziploc bag. I labeled it in Sharpie with the date, April 4, 2026. 3. I called Marlene back. I told her everything. She said, and this is the sentence I carried in my back pocket for 3 years, "Denise, whatever you need, I have a credit card and a guest room. You are not walking back into that house." I did not cry. I did not feel strong either. I felt clear. For the first time in 11 years, I felt clear. Sunday morning, I was up before the alarm. I drove to the nearest Enterprise and rented a 2023 Nissan Sentra for $287 a week on my credit union debit card. I drove to Pasadena, Texas. a working-class suburb southeast of Houston, 62 miles from Katy, far enough that I would not run into anyone from Carter Electric's job sites. I found a month-to-month studio apartment, $1,150 a month. The landlord was a widow who accepted cash and did not ask for references. She had, she said, been there. I didn't ask her to elaborate. Monday morning, I filed a change of address to a new PO box. The mail that would arrive at that box 6 weeks later, the mail that changed everything, was legal, automatic, and followed the paper trail the Postal Service creates whether or not the sender knows you've moved. Monday afternoon, I went to the Texas Workforce Commission. I printed a resume. I applied to 17 jobs. By Tuesday, I had one interview. Tuesday, April 7th, 10 a.m., Morales HVAC Supply, a family-run commercial HVAC distribution warehouse, 22 employees, owned by Frank and Lou Ann Morales. They needed a temporary office assistant. Frank looked at me for a long time, the way a man who has run a business for 31 years looks at a job applicant, and he said, "You ever done books?" I said, "Yes, sir." 11 years, plus 4 years of QuickBooks certification. He said, "Doing them for who?" I said, "My husband's electrical contracting business. He fired me Saturday." Frank and Lou Ann looked at each other. Lou Ann said, "Start tomorrow. $10 an hour, cash till we see." I started on Wednesday. By Friday of week 1, I had reorganized their accounts receivable, flagged $37,400 in unbilled invoices Frank didn't know he'd missed, and found $8,200 in duplicate vendor payments. That money wasn't just a win for Morales HVAC. That's when I realized I had been funding Roy's operation for 11 years while believing I had nothing to show for it. I had everything to show for it. I'd just been showing it to the wrong people. Friday evening, Frank called me into his office. He said, "Denise. Monday, $16 an hour, on the books, 30 hours a week to start, benefits after 90 days, that work?" I said, "Yes, Frank, that works." That was my first raise in 11 years. If someone left you like that, be honest. Would you survive it or go back? Drop it in the comments. I read everyone. Week 5. Tuesday, May 12th, 2026. 6:42 p.m. I walked to the PO box like I did every Tuesday. That week there was a thick manila envelope. Return address, Texas Capital Bank, Commercial Lending Division, Houston. My hands started shaking before I opened it. Inside were 23 pages, a notice of default on a commercial loan, $186,400 in principal. Signed January 17, 2025, 15 months earlier. Purpose: expansion of Carter Electric's warehouse space. Personal guarantor, Denise Harlow Carter. I had never signed a personal guarantee. I had never heard of a warehouse expansion. I had never been in a Texas Capital Bank branch in my life. The signature on page 18, my signature, Denise Harlow Carter, was forged. I knew because the middle initial was wrong. I have never signed Denise Harlow Carter. I have always, since 2014, signed Denise Lynn Carter. Lynn was my mother's name. I don't change that for anyone. Roy had forged my signature on a $186,400 personal guarantee. I sat in my car in the parking lot for 41 minutes reading those 23 pages. Then I drove home to my Pasadena studio. I made a cup of tea. I sat at my small kitchen table with a legal pad. I wrote at the top of the page 2 words. Find everything. I went to the public library. For 4 hours, I pulled every public business record I could find on Carter Electric, LLC. 7 loans, 3 personal guarantees in my name. A 2023 LLC filing that had added me as a managing member. A position I had never accepted, never been told about, and had no memory of signing for. $437,000 in total debt attached to my signature that I had never agreed to. I found, when I dug into the LLC's tax filings, that the business had been operating at a loss for 3 years, while Roy had continued to withdraw $9,500 a month from the business account for personal expenses and had transferred $87,000 to Kayla's personal Chase account over 18 months. I had been funding my own exit. Carter Electric was bleeding. Roy had been drowning. And I, the woman he had left on I-10 in 108 degrees F heat, was the personal guarantor on everything he'd signed my name to. Wednesday, May 13th, 7:12 a.m. I called a Houston attorney named Rosalind Byers, specialty in financial forgery. She answered her own phone. I told her in 6 minutes. The shoulder, the forgery, the loans, the LLC filing, the $437,000. Rosalind said, "Mrs. Carter, do not go back to that house. Do not call your husband. Do not speak to your stepdaughter. Come to my office at 10 a.m. today. Bring every document you have. We are going to file 3 things by Friday." Her paralegal, Trin, photographed every signature. She sat me down and said, "Mrs. Carter, write down your actual signature, the way you normally sign, 20 times. Slow, 1 per line." I did. Trin laid the 20 signatures next to the forged guarantee. She looked at Rosalind. She said, "Rose, the forger used a ruler to keep the baseline straight. Denise doesn't do that." Rosalind said, "Good, file it." By Friday, May 15th, 3 things had been filed in Harris County. 1. A petition for divorce on grounds of cruelty, abandonment, and fraud against the community estate. 2. A civil complaint for forgery and unauthorized use of identity against Roy Darrell Carter, seeking to void all personal guarantees bearing my forged signature. 3. A criminal referral to the Harris County District Attorney's Financial Crimes Division. 3 months later, the forgery analyst hired by Harris County confirmed in a 34-page report that every signature on every personal guarantee was forged. The forger had made one critical error. They had used Harlow as the middle initial, which the analyst noted was a name Roy had always resented, because it had been my name from my first marriage, and Roy had never liked being reminded there was a life before him. By June 2026, Texas Capital Bank had released me from all 3 personal guarantees. The bank filed its own criminal complaint against Roy for bank fraud, a federal crime, because Texas Capital is FDIC insured. Roy was arrested on August 7, 2026. Bank fraud, aggravated forgery, unauthorized use of identifying information, theft of over $100,000. Bond was set at $150,000. Carter Electric filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy in October. The house sold in November for $347,000, $42,000 less than Roy had paid for it. The Traverse was repossessed. Kayla moved out. Roy moved in with his brother in Corpus Christi while he awaited trial. Meanwhile, on my side of the ledger, something else was happening. Frank and Lou Ann put me on full-time salary in July 2026, $58,000 a year plus benefits. In September, Lou Ann pulled me into her office and said, "Denise, our CFO is retiring in January. I want you to interview for it." I said, "Lou Ann, I don't have a CPA." She said, "I don't give a damn about a CPA. I have watched you find $214,000 in unbilled work since April. I have watched you cut our receivables days outstanding from 71 to 38. Frank trusts you with the checkbook. I trust you with my grandchildren. You don't need a CPA, you need a business card." On November 14th, 2026, I signed a contract as Chief Financial Officer of Morales HVAC Supply. Salary, $124,000 base plus a 15% quarterly bonus pool and a 5% equity grant over 4 years. I was 53 years old. I had been left on the shoulder of I-10 7 months earlier, and I was, for the first time in my life, a C-suite executive. I moved out of the Pasadena studio in January 2027. I bought a 3-bedroom house on Sweetgum Court in Deer Park with a 20% cash down payment from my savings. I planted a magnolia tree in the front yard. I framed my mother's old name tag and hung it above my home office desk. February 2028, 10 months into my CFO job, I was doing a routine audit of one of our largest vendors when I noticed a pattern. 3 invoices processed through a sub-vendor account that didn't match any legitimate supplier. The sub-vendor, Texas Freight and Logistics LLC, was a Nevada shell with no employees, no website, and no actual shipping history. I pulled the payment trail. Morales HVAC had paid $148,000 to this shell company over 14 months through Gulf Apex Distributors as a pass-through. I pulled the ownership records. The managing member was the brother-in-law of the owner of Gulf Apex. I took it to Frank and Lou Ann on a Friday afternoon. Lou Ann said, "Oh hell." I said, "That's not all. I called 3 other commercial HVAC distributors in our industry group. They all use Gulf Apex. 2 of them found the same pattern. Total, approximately $1.8 million, skimmed from 4 Texas distributors over 2 years." Frank called the FBI Houston field office that afternoon. By June 2028, federal indictments had been filed on wire fraud, money laundering, and racketeering. Total recovered, $1.4 million across the 4 victimized distributors. Morales HVAC's share, $387,000. On August 8, 2028, the Houston Chronicle ran a business section feature on page B1 titled, "How a Rookie CFO Cracked a $1.8 million Fraud Ring That Fooled the FBI for 2 Years." The photograph was me, sitting in my office, navy blazer, file folder, looking directly at the camera. The caption read, "Denise Lynn Carter, 55, Chief Financial Officer of Morales HVAC Supply, identified the vendor fraud pattern that led to federal indictments. I just paid attention to the math," Carter said. "The math never lies. People do." The article ran at 6 a.m. on Wednesday, August 8th. By 9:14 p.m. that same night, Roy Carter had called my phone 71 times. I did not answer any of the 71 calls. He left 14 voicemails. I have listened to each of them exactly once. Voicemail 1, "Denise, it's me. I saw the paper. I saw the photo. Honey. Can you call me back?" Voicemail 4, "Denise, please, I've been out a year. I'm at Dale's. I got out in November. I wanted to call. I didn't know if please call me." Voicemail 7, "Kayla says hi, she's doing better. She got a retail job in San Marcos. She asks about you." Voicemail 10, "Denise, I made a terrible mistake. I know that. I know I can't take it back. But I saw your picture in the paper today and you look good. You look really, really good. You always did." Voicemail 13, "Denise, I'm sorry for the car. I'm sorry for the loans. I'm sorry for Kayla. I'm sorry for all of it. Can we just talk, please?" Voicemail 14, silence, then a single sentence so quiet I almost missed it. "I've never been prouder of anyone in my life." I deleted the voicemails at 9:31 p.m. I saved the audio files first, in an encrypted folder on my work laptop, time-stamped, labeled, and emailed to Rosalind Byers with the subject line, "For the record." Because I have learned, in the 3 years, 4 months, and 11 days since I stood on the shoulder of I-10, that you save everything. You keep everything, you write everything down. Rosalind called me the next morning. She said, "Denise, those voicemails are a violation of the protective order. Do you want to press?" I thought about it for a day. I thought about Roy in his brother's guest bedroom in Corpus Christi. Probably broke, probably on felony probation. Probably really realizing, what he had thrown away on a gravel shoulder outside Luling, Texas. I thought about Kayla working retail in San Marcos at 28 years old, probably telling her friends her stepmother was a gold digger who faked a forgery, because that would be easier than facing the alternative. I called Rosalind back. I said, "Rose, no charges, just send him a letter. Cease and desist, 1 line, no explanation." She sent it at 9:15 a.m. 1 paragraph. "Mr. Carter, this office represents Denise Lynn Carter. Do not contact her again by any method, directly or indirectly, now or in the future. Any further contact will result in an immediate motion to revoke your probation." He has not called again. It's April 2029 now. The magnolia tree in my front yard is 6 feet tall. It bloomed for the first time in March. The blossoms are white and the size of dinner plates, and they smell like lemon rind and something older than me. I sit on my porch in the morning and drink coffee out of a mug my sister Marlene gave me in the summer of 2026. My first month in Pasadena, that says, in chipped white letters, *, she remembered who she was and the game changed. I work 42 hours a week at Morales HVAC. I have a window. I have a business card. I have a direct deposit that arrives in my personal credit union account, the one from 1988, every other Friday at 5:47 a.m. I am 56 years old. I have $312,000 in a 401k that did not exist 3 years ago. I own a house. I own a car. I own every single thing in my life. Last Tuesday, Lou Ann took me to lunch on Clear Lake. Halfway through the meal, she reached across the table and put her hand on mine. She said, "Denise, Frank and I are retiring in 2031. We want you to buy us out." I said, "Lou Ann, I can't afford to buy it." She laughed, "Honey, we're going to seller finance you. 10% down, 15-year note at 4.5%. You won't even feel it." I sat there for a long time. I looked out the window at the lake. I thought about the truck driver who stopped with water. I thought about the $29.99 prepaid phone. I thought about Frank Morales saying, "You ever done books?" I thought about Lou Ann saying, "Good." I thought about Roy saying, "Get out of the car." I said, "Lou Ann, yes, I'll buy it." She said, "Good." Some days I look at the math of my life, and I add it up again. And I say, out loud to nobody, $10, Kayla, pay up. He thought I would come back. I built a life he could never reach, and I never answered a single call. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe and join our community for more true life stories. We'll see you in the next one.